Salam world! I'm a shorter than average girl from down under, and we're finally analyzing the final member of our Undercity trio.
Caitlyn Kiramman.
Now, I don't like Caitlyn. Not one bit. And it's personal. Caitlyn in season 1 was a character I could relate with. But then she turned into all the aspects of my being that I hate about myself. So, I was basically watching the most depraved thoughts that I've had on screen audaciously being enacted ways that my consciousness could not even imagine. But despite my personal beef with Caitlyn, her story highlights an overlooked social problem, one which tends to result to the biggest impact on economics, politics, and the media sphere, as we're currently seeing. And this is the trauma of the elite from inherited responsibility. Consequently, Caitlyn attempts to traverse this problem on her own, given that the world assumes well-off people have all the resources available to them to solve their own problems. So asking for help always came with a catch. Caitlyn has nobody that can help her, so she develops skills to identify and analyze problems, looks up to people that have things that she wants to manifest, not to mention using all the resources at her disposal to her advantage. A genius problem solver with no limits or reins but herself. So let's talk Kate's story. Caitlyn Kiramman is the only daughter of Tobias and Cassandra, the youngest member of House Kiramman, a matriarchal clan of wealthy entrepreneurs who have significant influence on Piltover's transport economy and justice system. Like many of the head families in Piltover, Kirammans are immigrants from the land of Ionia, a land made of different factions who initially valued isolationism, pacifism, and balance to live in peace with one another and the spirit world. That was until Noxus attacked, and militia factions started forming in Ionia. Take all that I've said with a grain of salt, 'cause I'm not a League player and have little knowledge with League lore. But I do find the similarities in the fate of the Kirammans and their homeland very interesting.
Coincidence? I think not!
Anyways, being born into such a well-known family whose influence impacts so many people's livelihoods, and being the only one who could continue the family's legacy as the only child, Caitlyn was born into a cage of expectations and future responsibilities, unsure whether the money her parents threw into her skills and hobbies were simply to keep her satisfied or because they genuinely supported her personal ambition. And with the methods her parents used to protect their daughter, Caitlyn felt it was more the first than the latter. So she looked at individuals outside her family as role models for the path that she wants to go down and the drive to surpass inheritance for personal drive. When the opportunity arose for her to prove herself to all those who seemed satisfied to cage her, she takes it, using others' favors to her connections, and her status to come back with the answers to all the council's questions, and proving that she can be a contributing member to the society, having followed her personal plan to her life, than to follow the footsteps of the Kiramman matriarchs before her. But it all breaks down in front of her eyes when her heart gets in the way, stopping her when she
Had the shot.
and propelling her into the fate she had fought her entire life to escape. And it is one Caitlyn struggles with, finding herself pulled in 3 different directions. Caitlyn's mind is still working, obsessive as Vi puts it, to find a solution, but her heart can't find the strength to enact any of them, which is why she needs to be given the green light by others to go hog water, justify her plans guilt-free. Caitlyn's story is that of the inner conflict between desire, heart, and mind, and how the environment influences their manifestation when resources are unlimited. and control isn't a factor, which poses my biggest contradiction with Caitlyn. I may not see the outcome of Caitlyn's story as fair or good, but I can understand her struggle and the reason why she does what she does on the show. I have thought about doing the things that Caitlyn has done when I have been bullied, harassed, assaulted, or abused. But as I grew up, I took the philosophy of Stoicism to heart. It stayed my hand, choosing to move on, acknowledge, and work on the hurt rather than seeking justice for myself. But when it comes to justice to others, I'm tempted. So I feel for Kid Kate. She just wants to be seen as Caitlyn, not a Kiramman. Growing up in the limelight of her family's accomplishments and connections, she was skeptical of every relationship she had, not knowing if people saw her or her last name. And the most painful relationship to question was that with her parents. I mean, what does anyone want but to be loved unconditionally, especially a child? Because through unconditional love can one experiment and find their place without suffering extreme consequences which present in self-doubt. Though Tobias and Cassandra loved Caitlyn very much, she was their only daughter, and so they were simultaneously spoiling her for choice, but overly protective with the outcome. This made Caitlyn feel like she couldn't really push herself to figure out her place. Her place felt chosen for her. Everything appeared to be given to her on a silver spoon. Until Grayson. We get a single flashback of Caitlyn prior to her introduction in season 1 episode 2. A flashback where we see all of Caitlyn's struggles manifest. Despite feeling good about her personal progress, she's worried that she's not actually good enough, hypothesizing that her parents had paid Grayson to let her win and held a farce of a celebration to make it feel authentic. So she confronts Grayson about it. Caitlyn's keen observations and skepticism are a consequence of living among the elite and their social games, a culture of unauthentic interaction and ulterior self-serving motives. Caitlyn had learned to keep an eye on every casual move, every buttered voice, and every quick gaze as not to be used by others, the only way to keep her freedom from social slavery. But Grayson assures her that she was indeed good enough, and her parents had no part to play and were genuinely celebrating her. But, and it's a big but, Grayson tells Caitlyn that there is no prize in being good enough. A talent is worthless if it isn't useful. We need to find reasons for our talents. And when those talents achieve that, there's your prize. And this reason doesn't have to be as selfless and purpose-fulfilling as Grayson's. It could simply be a way to wind down or help you reset. Any method to satisfy your needs. Grayson's words make a huge impact on Caitlyn, and a reason why she joins the Piltover Police Department when she's older. The same department Grayson formerly worked for, because that was the only way she had seen her skills being used in a valuable way. But of course, such a path is not befitting of someone with her last name. It would take immense courage and resilience for her to stand firm on this course. She had seen this kind of courage and resilience before. Jace. Against everyone's better judgment, Jace held steadfast to his Hextech dream, daring to work illegally, putting himself in danger and trouble for the sake of his research. And similar to Kate, Jace's mother also didn't value his drive as much as she valued his presence and safety. Caitlyn saw much of herself in Jace.
I'm a misfit too, I suppose.
The consequences of Jace's trial sapped hope from her future. If the dreams of a lower house academy graduate could be picked at the bud by the social system from a single mistake, what chance did the only heir of the Kiramman Empire have in becoming a decorated officer? A more consequential risk to society. If he could somehow turn this over, she could too. Foreshadowing. The Hextech boom and changed opinion of her parents could have certainly bolstered Caitlyn to take an active stand in her future trajectory, perhaps persuading her parents to agree to her career path. Yet still,
I can only imagine the strings she pulled to have me posted here.
Getting the job wasn't the end of Kate's uphill climb in defining her own self-worth. The job title doesn't give her a new last name after all, which, unconsciously, she uses.
Caitlyn. She's a Kiramman. Just like them, she does whatever she wants.
Now, this isn't because Caitlyn saw herself as holier than thou just yet, but because respect for authority wasn't something she learned growing up. This sounds negative on face value, but it's linked to her survival in the upper class growing up. Any level of submission or acceptance means leverage against her. The more independent, knowledgeable, and articulate she was, the freer she was in society. But now Caitlyn has selected an occupation. The terms of the game have changed. The chain of command is important to get jobs done. So she has selected a more submissive job to fulfill her purpose, yet her very being seeks autonomy and freedom from social standards. She adopts behaviors to fit better in her job, like using markers of authority, listening to orders, and being humble when she's called out for her more upper class behavior, but she still has a long way to go. So when Jinx creates a chaotic force which unites Cassandra and Marcus, Caitlyn loses everything. And instead of a victor saving her career, Kate uses Jace's offer to go rogue and prove herself.
How do you intend to prove any of this?
The plan was simple. Speak to Locke to see who attacked the airship at the Hex Gates, and she'll know who was at least responsible for the attack on the square. Then all she needed to do was hunt this person or people down, collect enough evidence to have the enforcers arrest them, and they'll have to give her her job back, if not upgrade her rank. Surely, if she retrieved the gemstone as well, she would get a bonus for having saved Piltover from future attacks. She is so set with her theory
The Great Conspiracy.
that she, like Victor, is willing to ignore orders to prove it right.
When you're going to change the world, don't ask for permission.
So off she goes to Stillwater. Till
Yeah, I'm afraid that's not possible.
good old Vi has taken her one chance to prove herself. So, as Caitlyn does in situations where she feels like her worth is being challenged psychologically, she confronts the stimulus directly to understand the truth behind it. And as if it were fate, she lucked out, even if she didn't know the extent of how lucky she is with this find. From Kate's POV, her witness stated that a she shot him, and his employer, a he, would kill him if he'd mentioned who she was. So some kind of friendly fire? Then her witness ends up getting beaten in prison. Had he said something that his employer got upset about and did a number on him? If so, it would suggest that the employer had connections within the justice system. But no, another inmate had done it. So the witness has enemies. And this is why Caitlyn needed to know who the perpetrator was. It was a new link in her great conspiracy. To her surprise, there were no records of this person. She was gonna have to go in. And this is where she started to luck out. A name. A claim that everyone worked for.
Silco, the industrialist.
If this was her witness's boss, she's one step closer to finding the she who shot her witness, and possibly the connection to the girl that she saw in the square. She needed to follow this lead, and this girl was offering to help. What did she have to lose? Her future and fate is in the hands of this prisoner. She was walking into this blind, a deer in the headlights, but Caitlyn was determined to stay in control of the situation. She was in the place of authority here, but Vi wasn't going to let Kate get away with that. She knew as soon as Kate had let her out of Stillwater that she desperately needed her. The ball was in her court so long as she didn't do anything too drastic. And Kate's tough girl arrogant act was how topsiders felt safe in their superiority. Something easily broken in danger and truth. But it turned out that Vi didn't need either of those to break Caitlyn's act. She just needed
My sunny personality.
we see Kate breaking slightly every time Vi does something she doesn't expect. Remember, Kate trusts the system. If Vi was in Stillwater, then she must be a criminal. And given there are no records of Vi, she needed to be extra cautious till she figured out Vi's deal. So like a peacock, she puffs out her chest to hold space. And Vi, acting contrary to her understanding, challenged her in an intriguing way. It's a start to her knowing the corruption within the system she trusted so much. A journey which reaches its climax in episode 6. But that wasn't the moment Kate was disarmed. This was. After Vi had broken another piece of Kate's pride shield with the truth, given her advice and a compliment, she gave her the opportunity to put all of it into practice. Gave her back the power in the most distracting places. A brothel. Did Caitlyn get any info on Silco? Most likely not, but she did gain a level of appreciation for Vi. Despite being her superior and them getting on each other's nerve, Vi had gotten her result. And the freedom, if you will, to find her own evidence with regards to her own investigation, which is more than she could have expected from a convict, and makes Vi a valuable asset to her. She's just got to be stealthy about it, which isn't Caitlyn's strong suit, because she couldn't resist to get lost on the source herself. Before continuing further in Kate's story, we need to understand how starting off well impacts an individual's wants and needs, as well as their open-mindedness and means of forming connection, because this influences how Caitlyn interacts with characters through both seasons. Desires. Yes, we're talking about them again. But given that I've spoken about them in length before, here are some cliff notes. Desires are cravings or signals triggered by electro or chemical reactions in our body. They only exist in the present, either physical or something that we're currently imagining or thinking about. So humans developed foresight to account for the outcomes of acting on these cravings or triggers, perhaps staying our hand for a better future outcome. If the body feels safe or satisfied in its ability to survive, desires become signals and cravings for living, which is more complex. The pressure moves away from finding food, shelter, security, and a mate to finding purpose, contentment, self-assurance, and mutual connection. But the way that these more complex desires act are still the same, instantaneous without foresight. And the detriment of acting on desire comes in two forms: a negative outcome or tolerance, which spirals into addiction without foresight. So, the two ways that one can curb this is either the environment does it for you by limiting the resources available to you, which is not the case for Caitlyn, or self-control. And this second one is harder to achieve because it's the will's resistance to natural selection for a different kind of evolution. The more resources a person can afford, the more resilient they would need to train themselves to be. And unfortunately, we have more examples than not of people struggling with excessive resources or completely restraining themselves from worldly pleasure to the extent that it does harm their survival. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist that people find the right balance between worldly pleasure which best fits their level of control. In Caitlyn's case, she has access to everything. And given that she was here, why not indulge herself given that she personally doesn't see any harm with it? Because unlike most of us, the power, influence, and money in Caitlyn's disposal minimizes the risk of there being consequences to acting on her desires significantly. And this appears through the series multiple times, which means that she doesn't really care too much about building a tolerance. But in saying that, Caitlyn has been suffocated from one thing her entire life: responsibility. Another way one can view Kate's life is that the reason why she tries so hard to prove herself is because no one has really trusted her with anything before. Success was manipulated around her, making her question whether anyone really trusted her to win for herself. That's why she wants to get into the game, compete on her own merit. She wants to come up with results to show that she is worthy of responsibility, so that when people around her show that they do believe in her, she, in her own subconscious, could believe that one day she is worthy of the Kiramman key. Caitlyn doesn't want an inheritance. She wants things due to her own merit. That's where her pride lies. So when someone who doesn't know she's a Kiramman compliments her, it touches Caitlyn. She feels seen for herself, not for her class or status, which is all Caitlyn had desired. And the start of her falling for Vi, which is why she leaves her indulgent time to look for and save Vi's life. As we mentioned in Vi's videos, she was grateful to Kate, but still doesn't trust her. At the end of the day, she was a guilty officer, but now wasn't the time for that. Savika had gotten away, which means Silco will come after them very soon. Caitlyn was becoming more desperate now. It wasn't just a point of pride. She is in the thick of the Undercity's dangers, and the only way she could possibly be safe and get results was to make sure that Vi was okay and back on her feet. So she's going to do all that Vi asks, even if it was mental. Caitlyn didn't quite know what to do after Vi passes out, but she had to do something. Vi was her responsibility after all.
That actually freaked me.
Despite not knowing Huck, she follows. Again, what does she have to lose? Getting Vi's medication isn't the important part of Caitlyn's interaction with Huck. It's this.
Shimmer, why would you take something that does that to you?
Huck's character through the series is a personification of the average Zornite. Their struggles, their pain, their needs. So Kate's interaction with him is the final piece to the puzzle of questions she had about the slums of Zorn. How could the council let this happen? Caitlyn loses the arrogant act, trading her rifle, her only means of power and protection, for medicine. Vi, danger, the truth, all broke down that I am better shtick. She had asked Vi to see them as human without taking the opportunity to view them as humans herself. Inadvertently, she had still seen them as dangerous, people she needed to protect herself from. Not anymore. As an officer, she had a duty to protect them as well. And it's when Vi realizes that Caitlyn had gotten out of her way to save her that she tells her the truth about her family, her sister, Powder.
Your sister is Jinx.
Oops. Of course, the moment that Caitlyn finally seems to see the full picture about how much the Undercity's suffering, she is swiftly reminded of the danger it possesses to her and Topside. This problem was a lot more complex and nuanced than it first seemed, and it was just going to get more complex. Something that she could resolve in this moment was getting the gemstone back, and then she'll deal with the family drama once they get away from the firelights. Never mind. Never mind. Kate and Vi don't necessarily feel betrayed by one another for the revelations on the rooftop, but they've definitely realized that they weren't on the same page. The motives for their collaboration have become apparent, and Caitlyn realizes that Vi had a right keeping her business her own as she had done so. She didn't owe her transparency. She needed to earn that. And she wanted to, because now that the truth was out, Vi is even more valuable to her. In purpose and pride. She wanted and needed her safe. Then Echo gives Kate the final piece of the puzzle to the Great Conspiracy, spinning a web of connections between Silco, the Enforcers, and the economy to strengthen the Undercity's might and demand for independence from Topside through fear and intimidation, leaving a trail of chaos, poverty, exploitation, addicts, and broken families in the wake. Sacrifices not all Zornites are willing to make. Having Echo's rebels fight Silco's goons will not save the Undercity. Her solution? Asks the only other person she trusts for them. Only thing, a lot has changed with Jace these past few days. Peekaboo! And more so now.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man.
Without realizing it, Caitlyn's plan to ask Jace's cooperation in return for the gemstone was doomed to fail because he was no longer that person she knew anymore.
What happened to you?
and she loses the gemstone to Jinx. But the chaos on the bridge provides the ammunition for the council to re-examine Jinx's attack, opening the window for Caitlyn to present the great conspiracy to the council. She has finally gotten everything she's wanted. Her parents' blessing and support for her career path, appointed responsibility by both Cassandra and Marcus, and to be in the council room as an informant like Freyson and Marcus before her. Caitlyn couldn't believe it, and she couldn't have done it without Vi. But Jace was right. The council needed more proof to take action on the Great Conspiracy, to both Kate and Vi's dismay. For Caitlyn, this wasn't a problem though. When the council, or any authority figure, rejects her idea, she did things her own way. Why should this be any different? Her and Vi could work something else out, if Vi wanted to. But no, Vi had made her mind to do things her way, given that she'd given Caitlyn's way a go, and it had failed. And her way was Echo's way. She knew Caitlyn wouldn't be on board with this, but as we said in Vi's vids, she felt like she needed to do this. So for Kate, this was more to Kate than just parting ways. Vi was the only person who saw her outside the Kiramman name, so the rejection of a collaboration due to her family was a deep blow. It was another thing the Kiramman name had taken away from her, and she can't shake it off, replaying that moment in her head over and over again, etching the final moment she may ever be seen as an equal ever again. Until... So Kate and Vi reunite, but not exactly the way Caitlyn had in mind. Her life was in the hands of the mad woman who hated her guts. She has seen what Jinx is capable of, and she was terrified. Rightfully so. She didn't understand Jinx. Sometimes it seemed like she was focused and others not. Sometimes it seemed that Vi could get through to her, and others Vi made her livid. She was unpredictable, which made her all the scarier, especially under the current helpless circumstances she's in. So this isn't about Kate trusting Vi to help free her, because Vi could do everything quote-unquote right, and it could still trigger Jinx off. Then there was another unknown variable in the mix. What power and influence did he have over Jinx? What did he think about her? She was helpless until the opportunity arose. She could free herself, and Vi, if she timed it right. This was the moment Caitlyn's mission had built up to. The showdown with the girl from the square. She had one shot to secure her safety, bring her back to the council, save the day, and have everything she wanted. To use her skill in the best way she could. Or she could lose everything. Her life, Vi, the safety of Piltover, and her pride. She wasn't going to lose focus or miss. Through Vi's pleas, she stays her ground until Jinx puts her gun down. For all her craziness, Jinx is a genius. Caitlyn's attention was on Jinx because the weapon was in her hand. Get rid of it, and Caitlyn will feel a false sense of safety and control. Act it up, and it'll add to Caitlyn's sense of security, giving Caitlyn a window to think about her next move, which is all she needs to pounce. And it worked. As soon as Jinx put that gun down, Kate takes her eye off her for a second to consider Vi and how her next moves will affect her. She had to pick between her pride or her peace. And that slight moment of hesitation is Caitlyn's humiliating moment, her biggest regret, the thing she tries to make up for at the start of season 2. Because in her absence, everything goes really wrong, and she's too late, too broken to fix anything. The death of Cassandra was less about Caitlyn losing her mother and more about her losing her chances to prove herself. Cassandra represented Caitlyn's destined path and was the only person Caitlyn ever wanted approval from. Not because she hated being a Kiramman or because Cassandra never showed Caitlyn any love, but because she knew one day she needed to fill her mother's shoes as the Kiramman matriarch. She was waiting for the you're ready from her to make all the work mean something. But Jinx had taken that away from her. She will never believe that she's ready for the Kiramman key. Every duty henceforth she took for the sake of another, not a belief in herself. To prioritize Vi in that moment, she felt that she had let her mother down, her father down, Jace down, the council, Piltover. She had failed, and not even her status would give her the respect she once had. Without her mum, she's pushed into a role without the necessary prerequisites. She needs to be a matriarch for her family, strong and unassumed, when in reality, she is grieving all that she has lost. The only person she could show that to was the one person who saw her outside the Kiramman name. Having abandoned her sister, come home with her, and stayed by her side, Caitlyn felt like Vi was here for her, that she had chosen her, so she too wanted to choose her. She wouldn't let her go to her death to make things right. She didn't want anyone else to die, so she was going to take her thinking cap off. No more solo plans to prove her worth. She's going to fall in line and take back her job. Listen to orders so no one else gets hurt. And if Vi really wanted to stop Jinx, she wouldn't stop her. Just make sure she was safe in doing so by asking her to join the enforcer ranks alongside her, fighting side by side, protecting one another, sticking by each other. She explains herself perfectly.
Every way I slice it, one of us comes back in a box.
But she had overestimated Vi's devotion, and that hurt too. There were 3 pains in Kate's life now. The pain and burden of unearned responsibility and shame linked to her mother's untimely death. The anger and rage at the unapologetic injustice inflicted by Jinx, and the conflicting pains of loss and betrayal of Vi walking out on her. Caitlyn says that the garden was the only place where her mother and herself didn't argue, in the presence of an imported tree from their homeland of Ionia. There is a beautiful subtleness to this detail, how the weight of the Kiramman's success as immigrants was a constant point of tension that was only ever alleviated when they were in the presence of a piece of their ethnic home. No matter how much a person integrates into a multicultural society, they will continually feel the need to prove their place within it due to the level of imposter syndrome they experience from a self-inflicted pressure to represent their entire race. I would add that for every following generation of an immigrant household, that imposter syndrome enhances because they will feel that imposter syndrome within their ethnic group and inherit their parents' imposter syndrome within the society that they were born in. So Cassandra's imposter syndrome would have been worse than that of her mother's, and Caitlyn's worse than Cassandra's, explaining the pressure and rift between them beyond just being an only daughter and raised off well. In the same vein, when the OG successful Kiramman found peace here next to the Ionian tree, that peace radiated to her daughter, lifted the burden she felt, and allowed the two to be at peace. And so you find that there is at least one inherited tradition per family which sticks, because it holds a sense of peace inherited from one generation to another, regardless of the ethnic background. This is just the Kiramman's one. Kate comes here to clear her head, find some semblance of solace. Despite the pain, we see in her conversation with Jace that she keeps a level head, refusing to generalize her hate for Jinx to all Zornites, and make Vi's rejection impact her feelings for her. She couldn't give up on Vi, just as Jace couldn't give up on Victor. Vi was all she had, which wasn't collapsing all around her. Vi had come back for her thrice before. What was harm in hoping that she'd come back again now? And if she does, the uniform would be ready for her if she chooses to wear it. In Kate's mind, this was keeping Vi's choices open, offering her an opportunity, whereas in Vi's mind, this was adding a moral conflict to a relationship she was struggling to maintain. On a needs level, Vi's desires for connection are less intense in general because she has been in survival mode for most of her life, thus a lower tolerance necessary to form it. The opposite is true for Caitlyn. She was offered too many opportunities, which to her turned out to be superficial and unsatisfactory, making her tolerance threshold high and in demand of more replenishment of true connection, something which she only felt was possible with Vi and Jace. But then comes the moment of change for Caitlyn, the memorial. Ambessa wanted to bring her daughter alongside by exploiting the political situation to stoke fear and lead her daughter to put aside her diplomatic pessimism out of desperation. This had ignited the buried prejudice of the Undercity in Kate accidentally. Through season 1, Caitlyn had developed an open-minded, experimental view of the Undercity, but she could only afford to do so because she unconsciously felt safe enough. Open-mindedness, intrigue, and wonder are an indirect consequence of feeling secure, because there is less of a need to use prior knowledge for survival, which is why it's easier for Caitlyn to open up to Vi than the other way around, or why Jace was quicker to give Silco an offer than Silco to him. They compromise because they feel safe to do so. And this is why fear is a primary tactic for gaining power, because it controls initiative, openness, and new connections, which may lead to a controller losing their power. Silco and Marcus are a very good example of this. But as I've mentioned in previous videos, like the V for Vendetta one, the only thing which truly trumps fear is hate. This planned attack on the memorial, a place for somber solidarity, removed that safety that Caitlyn once felt. She could no longer justify constraining her hate to just Jinx.
Animals!
She had so many overwhelming emotions to deal with, and when we don't feel supported, we seek to inflict that same pain on others in hope of creating more people with the same experience, more people to relate to us. In Kate's eyes, Vi and Jace weren't processing events in the same way, which made it feel like that they don't understand how she feels, so they couldn't support her. And again, these higher needs and demands, this feeling of isolationism that Caitlyn feels, it's because she grew up more well off than both Jace and Vi, meaning that she needed to do a lot of filtering, a lot of questioning and confronting to survive the social landscape of higher society to find the right fits for her needs without being used or exploited. And a good way of viewing this may be to contrast Kate with Powder. In season 1, episode 3, we see Powder latch on to Silco for the smallest bit of attention that he gives her. And later on, despite the huge differences between them, they continued to love each other, even though it wasn't healthy, and tried to make things work at the detriment of both their own identities and convictions. Contrasting Kate and Powder's social circumstances and the sacrifices each demanded due to the offerings and dangers of each class really highlight the dominant issues in higher and lower societies. No place is without problems. The problems are just significantly different, but equally as important to focus on and try to resolve. So Kate felt really alone. As a consequence, she wanted to cause pain, but she wanted to be reasonable with it. And there are many reasons for this. 1, Kate believed that she's better than them. She won't stoop down to their level. 2,
Your actions reflect on the entire body.
and as the head of House Kiramman, the future of the house depends on how she's going to act. And finally,
Kate!
both Jace and Vi have grieved a parent and made it through it. So they too believe that Caitlyn can get through this, that she is good, and she will do the right thing. Despite her feelings, she has a persona to uphold for them because she cares about them and their opinion. But she also can't help how she feels. And more truthfully, she didn't know how to deal with how she feels. Forgiveness is a tactic to alleviate stress and anxiety associated with victimhood, which then trickles down to have numerous physiological benefits. It's an intentional psychological way to break this constant fight and flight response after an incident makes someone feel unsafe. But the compounding pressures on Caitlyn and the complete loneliness that she felt dealing with it made it impossible to find a safe place to start that process of forgiveness. Yes, Vi was offering her support, but the truth she was providing wasn't consoling to Kate, who'd been absolved of responsibility for her actions so far in her life. Vi be giving these pilties a reality check. The level of safety Vi can provide isn't the same security she was used to. So she feels like she needs to put the work in herself to make her life stable again, which links to her fight and flight response, hence her inability to forgive and her desire to cause pain in the name of justice. HELLFIRE perfectly summarizes Kate's mentality, and I'll be honest, it was the most relatable song to me on the show. There were actions taken to me by a particular individual in my life which have caused irreparable damage. And retrospectively, an unconscious part of me takes blame for not having been less kind and less loving to this individual, believing that if I was tougher or less considerate, then that damage would not have been done. It's very similar to how Kate feels with her duel with Jinx. If she hadn't considered Vi in that moment and just taken the shot, perhaps her mum would still be alive. By the way, this mentality is wrong for so many reasons, but it forms as a way to regain control, predictability, and safety in a person dealing with trauma. If you were the problem, there are steps you can take to solve it. And Kate's biggest strength is problem solving. It's the purpose she had assigned herself, to reach this satisfactory level of responsibility worthy of the Kiramman name. So feeling like her mother's death is her fault gives Caitlyn the excuse to use the Kiramman name to avenge her. Assume this level of authority she personally believes that she doesn't deserve for her father's sake, and then develop a method to personally duke it out with Jinx again, which was quote-unquote legal. And she does that as to not disappoint her mother by rebelling against the standards that she believed in, but also to make sure the council, the only people that may understand her pain, aren't her enemy. It also allows her to justify her actions morally if they comply with the law of the land, which is why she calls them right there for the wrong reason. To further make herself feel good about taking revenge on Jinx, she needs to make sure that Vi and Jace also agree with her, and she makes sure of that by giving them what they want. For Vi, she would convince the council to call off the invasion and cause minimal harm to Zornites by using the Grey to clear the streets while searching the lanes for Silco's followers and, most importantly, Jinx. In exchange, Vi wanted to help with her gauntlets, which was only possible legitimately if she adorned an enforcer uniform. And later on, when Kate feels that Vi's nerves are changing, she does what she can to keep control. As for Jace, she was going to make his demands for Silco in the proposed peace deal a reality.
I will lead a strike team into Zorn with 3 objectives: locate Jinx, dismantle Shimmer, and neutralize any agents still loyal to Silco.
In exchange for building her team Hextech weapons. And even though both Jace and Vi do exactly what Kate wants, because they want to support her through this, it's not seen that way by Caitlyn, because she's the one who did the planning and asked them. And so, again, HELLFIRE highlights the soloness of Caitlyn's mission, even though she's working in a team. This isn't born out of entitlement or selfishness. but the exhaustion of the mental load of needing to deal with her own safety herself, than having someone there making her feel safe. And it's a feeling that plays a huge part as to why Caitlyn hurts and leaves Vi later on. Again, a super relatable feeling when you go through something traumatic and don't have someone to throw your weight on, especially when you see the people around you dealing with things and you don't want to add to it. But the resolution that Caitlyn picks is to lean into her pain, her hate, her inner demon, her shadow, if you like, using logic to justify casualties and numbing her emotions to cope. As a consequence, she loses the moral high ground she had gained by her open-mindedness, and she starts dehumanizing Zornites, because fear leads to closed-mindedness, increased caution, and generalizations in hope of avoiding situations which had caused that trauma previously. She couldn't tell which Zornites were loyal to Silco or not, so to save herself from harm, all were until proven otherwise. Guilty till innocent. Fear flips the script on morality, and the makers really hammer this home with Jinx's arena. It was House Kiramman that had built the pipelines to purify the Undercity from the toxic gas.
They call it the Grey.
A favor considered so greatly by the people of Zorn that the matriarch of House Kiramman at the time was made into a legend and deified.
Some wispy wind woman wafts to their rescue.
Jinx may not have known the lore, but she did pick the location to highlight that what Kate and Vi were doing was the opposite, luring them down slowly into this arena. Jinx's quarrels weren't with Kate, they were with Vi. But she knows Caitlyn was here for round 2, so she needed to distract Caitlyn long enough for her to hash it out with her sis, ending her family and continuing what she had started for Silco. Enter Sevika, a person who's also meant to highlight Caitlyn's hypocritical actions. Sevika was in the arena for Zorn, assisting Jinx with this final hurrah against Piltover, regardless if Jinx gets her wish to die or not. Caitlyn was supposedly there for Piltover, a promised replacement to the full-scale invasion, but as Vi knew, Kate was here due to her hatred to Jinx. So again, just as it played out in the tea party, when an unexpected opportunity opens up, Caitlyn takes it, unarms her opponent, then listens to her heart, which again costs her saving Piltover and causes her to return topside with her tail between her legs. But instead of blaming herself this time, she blames Vi for the failure. Caitlyn has the tendency to obsess over one goal at a time.
I thought Powder could get obsessed.
Placing all additional complexities aside until she deems it safe enough to consider. She's tunnel-visioned, which fits in so well with her problem-solving and rifle skills, and is a repeated motif with Caitlyn, particularly in Season 2. When she loses her open-mindedness, she becomes more tunnel-visioned. In this situation, Piltover was a secondary objective to making Jinx pay, making her entire rule-abiding shtick hypocrisy. The plan was that Vi would distract Jinx so that Caitlyn can finally have the shot, because she couldn't risk Jinx's unpredictability like last time. After having dealt with Sevika, Caitlyn goes back to her original target, but things go awry, and Caitlyn fears Vi's hesitation. From the start, Kate has felt Vi wavering with the task at hand, consequently not trusting her to get the job done. A sentiment repeated by Vi herself twice already in this episode. So when Caitlyn orders Vi to move, she is asking her to let her deal with it. She doesn't want Vi to be close enough to Jinx to react to her shot, nor is she going to let Jinx get away. Vi knows that Kate's
an excellent shot.
She's proven that time and time again. Unconsciously, she knows that Caitlyn won't hit Isha, but she uses Isha as an excuse to let Jinx go. This is what infuriated Kate. Vi had chosen her sister over her after all. Saving her life did not compensate for the betrayal Caitlyn felt at that moment. Vi had been warning her again and again that she was struggling to commit to this, but she had thought that she had it under control and ignored the signs, blinded by her single desire to catch Jinx. Then Vi delivers the final blow.
Then why are you the one acting like her?
Questioning Caitlyn's moral authority. The one thing she had deluded herself of having, but subconsciously knew that she didn't. And so, Kate needed to make a choice. Accept the truth and be disarmed, accepting the consequences of her actions, or deny it to save the little pride, security, and control that she had left. And she chose the latter. Vi was no longer useful to her. She was a liability. And every way she sliced it, she couldn't see a way where she could have both Jinx and Vi. And in this moment, she would rather have Jinx. So now we've got to introduce another character into the mix.
You're Mel's mom.
Ambessa was thoroughly impressed by Caitlyn's initiative and nerve in the council meeting. It proved to her that she had what her daughter did not, the ability to get her hands dirty for a cause she believed in. Of the remaining counselors, Cello had been her best bet, but the downside was he wasn't motivated, driven only by his desire for indulgence and now revenge. He lacked both the battle smarts and collectedness needed for the situation, meaning that every conversation and decision would be a chore to explain. Caitlyn had shown true Noxian strength, making her a more suitable candidate for her plans, but more importantly, more malleable. Not yet defined by the sentiments of
soft-spined idealists.
Of Piltover's society. Caitlyn so far really had only worked solo or with a couple of friends, yet she had been able to do so much on her own. If she was given all authority and resources, what was she capable of? And as we mentioned in Ambessa's video, she was doing all this to find a means of both protecting Mel from the Black Rose and avenging Kino. But the thing is, if Caitlyn were to have all the authority and resources, she would need guidance. A position she was too eager to volunteer for.
Your mother will have justice. I swear it.
What Ambessa hadn't volunteered for is how deep her feelings for Caitlyn were gonna get. Nor did Maddy. And here we need to talk about an important Season 1, Season 2 parallel that is often overlooked. The contrast of Cassandra and Marcus's roles in Caitlyn's life to Ambessa's and Maddy's. Because both Cassandra and Ambessa play a large maternal role in Caitlyn's life, whilst Marcus and Maddy are both impacted by Caitlyn's disturbance of hierarchical order, which ultimately lead them to betray her and their eventual deaths. All four of these characters compare and contrast to Caitlyn herself, helping us decipher her priorities and ambitions versus her indulgences and fears. We've spoken quite a bit about Caitlyn and Cassandra's relationship, but more will become apparent when we talk about both Marcus and Ambessa. So let's start with Marcus. Like Caitlyn, young Marcus believed in the system and his job as an officer. He also looked up to Grayson as a role model for what he wants to be in the department. But the two conflicted when he saw Grayson questioning the authority of the council for the sake of giving leeway to the Undercity. In his eye, Piltover and the Undercity were separate entities, and so protecting Topside took precedence. When an offer came which would bring immediate results and make him the hero in the council's eye,
Well, how could I refuse?
so he rebels, makes dealings with Undercity folk for the sake of his own beliefs and ambitions, like Kate. But unlike Kate, who was dealing with kind-hearted Zornites like Vi and Echo, Marcus got Silco, who not only went back on his word instantly, but got Grayson killed. He had unknowingly made a pact with the devil. Post this event, Silco uses Marcus's guilt for Grayson's death to guide him into her footsteps. All the same prestige in Piltover without the moral honor behind it. Like Kate!
Come, child.
And when a new joy came into Marcus's life, Silco uses Ren to blackmail Marcus, making his compliance existential. And though Marcus still dreams of doing the right thing, he can't risk his daughter's life, making his job the bane of his existence. He resents his choices, his naivety, and the villain he has become. His only redemption was being a father. So he sees Caitlyn's innocent pursuit of justice, her belief in the system, her drive for truth, and is repulsed by it. For both, it reminds him of who he was and continually risking his only redeeming quality at the same time. He was always going to be against Caitlyn for what she stood for and what she'd cost him, even though they were both playing on the same team. But because he can relate to her and understands the value and love a parent has for a daughter, it stays his hand. Yes, he probably loved it when Cassandra asked him to post her in front of the family tent or boot her from the force. But he also understood Cassandra's fears for Caitlyn. They were the same fears he had for Ren. He couldn't inflict that same pain on another soul. And that hesitation was enough to be his demise. The moment that Caitlyn understood,
Tell my daughter.
which is an ironic death when put side by side with Silco's. When it comes to season 2, we see Marcus's story replay again through Kate's. The guilt of her mother's death plays like Marcus's guilt for Grayson's. Then they are offered all their ambitions to make up for that guilt. But the price of that is their morality, only for love to stay both their hands.
Why does anyone commit acts others deem unspeakable? For love.
It's really interesting that these words came from Singed, a man who exchanged everything for his daughter, like Marcus, rather than from Ambessa, who also started all this for her children. I think it reflects the difference between Singed and Marcus compared to Cassandra and Ambessa's connections with their daughters. Both Singed and Marcus, I would argue Silco as well, turned into villains for their daughters, whilst Ambessa and Cassandra have responsibilities to maintain their class and social standing that they don't compromise on, which clashes in their relationships with their daughters and hinders their evolution or redemption. As we mentioned in the Madada video, Ambessa started off using Caitlyn to gain control and the highest level of intelligence and resources for her own needs. But then her admiration for Caitlyn grows as she sees the wisdom of her daughter with the addition of grit to get her hands dirty. Not to mention, Caitlyn is willing to listen and use what she's learnt from Ambessa. Mal had always resisted her mother's lessons, even if they were true. She feared turning into her mother. Ambessa saw this as rejection by her own daughter. She never felt good enough when she was around Mal.
You weakened me.
On the other hand, despite Caitlyn's skepticism of Ambessa's motives, she is genuinely appreciative for all Ambessa had done for her and Topside. For all it was worth,
she delivered us Zorn, as she vowed.
And though Caitlyn doesn't fully trust Ambessa, she's attentive because she sees a lot of similarities between their approaches, something she never saw in her own mother, thus being surprised when her mother agreed to help her. Now, these similarities between Caitlyn and Ambessa are undeniable. Their vision.
Your eyes see what others don't.
Their might.
Bending your environment to your will.
Their guile.
Absent accountability.
And their pain.
Born of suffering.
So it makes sense why they get along so well. But unlike Ambessa, who saw their differences as admirable, Caitlyn saw them as a dividing factor, a barrier to making this a fully mutual relationship. This difference being
to forgive and trust in tomorrow.
Caitlyn hasn't yet reached forgiveness here, but she has reached acceptance. Ambessa, on the other hand, was still fighting the fear of the Black Rose and their ability to use Mal. She was in this constant state of fighting something haunting her that Even when her daughter comes back, she can't let go of it. To Caitlyn, this seemed unwise. A waste of time from doing things that could actually make a difference. And I'm probably about to say the most controversial thing about Arcane, but the person who helped Caitlyn realize this was Maddy. This character, in my opinion, is very overhated. Yeah, I don't like her either. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that was because she's a suck up for the character that I actually hate the least on the show. With the added caveat that her death was very entertaining. Albeit unjust. Maddy is another young pilty idealist that believes in the system, looking up to and being inspired by Caitlyn. She's still very much in the beginning stages of her career journey and hasn't yet experienced the true nuances of the real world, making her a yes man to the authority she trusts. Combining her inspo with the authority was a dream, so of course she was all in for Caitlyn being the supreme leader. She 100% trusts and loves Caitlyn, which is why Caitlyn starts a relationship with her. Caitlyn's consciousness is eating her alive for all the things she's doing to Zorn and leaving Vi behind. But she's doubling down on her decisions to get Jinx. To alleviate that weight from her consciousness, she wants a yes man to tell her what she's doing is the right thing, not someone who will question her actions like Vi. So Maddy was a perfect rebound for her. That was until Maddy started having an opinion.
You could call it off. Withdraw from the underground. Re-establish the council.
A sound one at that. But that would mean letting Jinx get away with it again. It would make all her choices till now futile, making the justifications she'd made null void, and having the weight of her immorality come crashing down on her. Maddy wasn't doing what Kate had put her in this position for, which is why she starts moving away from her. Kate never loved Maddy. She was just using her. But Maddy did love Kate. And Ambessa could easily tell, which is why she warns,
I suppose I don't need to advise you on the hazards of professional entanglements.
Oh boy. Ambessa certainly uses Maddy to her advantage when Vi comes back into the picture. Because Caitlyn quickly disregards Maddy when she's reunited with Vi.
Not to mention Ambessa as well.
Prioritizing her, caring for her, to the point that she puts on hold her ambitions to bring Jinx to justice until Vi comes to. This all seemed so out of character for Maddy, which of course made her sus. And when Caitlyn cheats on her with Vi, she does exactly what she learned to do from Caitlyn. Take revenge.
I warned you of the hazards of professional entanglement.
Very Isha-esque. Both Isha and Maddy idolized Jinx and Caitlyn, believing in what they represented and copied their actions. Or worse, Jinx and Kate used them to fulfill their own needs, reaping the seeds they sowed. But unlike Jinx, Kate gets away with it. The injustice hurts. Why do the rich and powerful get away with being scummy? Just because their place in the world is important and difficult to replace. Like, I know bringing the elite to justice has greater ramifications and consequences because it leads to a huge power vacuum and so has greater social implications, but it sucks that they can basically exploit that fact to get away with moral crimes, if not actual crimes. And what should I have expected? Their friends after all. Whether or not Caitlyn admits this, all four characters, Cassandra, Marcus, Ambessa, and Maddy, were impacted by her presence in their lives. In the first two, Caitlyn doesn't necessarily see their value until they're both gone, whilst for the second two, she recognizes their worth, but once she no longer needs them because she has a new mindset, she doesn't know how to navigate their presence in her life anymore, ultimately betraying them both and turning them against her, which puts all she has worked for in jeopardy, which begs the question, what changed Kate? I can tell you the answer that people want me to say, that Singed or Dr. Ravik's words made her remember Vi, so when she was finally reunited with her, she flips, prioritizing her love for Vi and giving her the excuse to betray Ambessa. But I think Caitlyn was questioning everything way before Singed's words. But then she kinda doubles down again because of the whole prison break thing. Singed actually perfectly diagnoses Caitlyn when they first meet.
Your youth betrays you. Patience is a product of age.
Impatience is a response of unmet expectations. And expectations come from past experience, family, and society. She had signed up to
I will lead a strike team into Zorn with 3 objectives. Locate Jinx, dismantle Shimmer, and neutralize any agents still loyal to Silco.
Those were her expectations. But it had been months, and all they had really done was rally the entire Undercity against her. As Maddy had pointed out, the task has exponentially grown in size. She is losing more control over things, which was adding to her guilt, feeling of inadequacy, and incompetence. Ambessa had pushed her into a role she wasn't ready for, just as she had felt her mother pushing her into the Kiramman matriarchy without being ready for it. And just as she had wanted an out from her family duties, so did she want an out from Ambessa. And again, without knowing it, she lucks out in the cells of Stillwater, leading her back to Vi. Vi reminded Kate of the old days, the person she used to be and liked to be, the days before the blast.
Hating you, I've hated myself.
So she's gonna do it again. Rebel against the authority to get what she wants. And she does what she does best. Make a plan. She once more throws away the title and protocols which come with it. But things weren't as easy as it seemed. She wasn't the same person anymore. She still hated Jinx. So even though Vi's backup plan worked and Jace saved her when things were going all haywire, she needed to confront her own demons. Destroy everything she'd made. But at the same time, she had a duty to the city, to justice. She can't just let Jinx go, can she? Especially now that she turned herself in. I don't know what the law in Piltover is, but Caitlyn tells Jinx that she can atone for a crime somehow without there being a trial. And the fact that she says that no amount of good deeds can undo your crime makes me believe that it isn't community service. So without Vi breaking her out, I don't know what Kate would have done. But now that Vi did break her out, what she does decide to do is let her be, using Jace's war as an excuse not to put any resources into catching her.
You really think I needed all the guards at the Hex Gates?
Yes, that appeared to be enough redemption in Vi's eyes, but Caitlyn still hadn't forgiven Jinx, and she feared losing Vi to Jinx again, which is why she opts not to tell Vi that her sister is alive. You know, to keep Vi with her.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
But it still wasn't enough for Kate just to leave things as is. She now needs to redeem herself in Piltover's eyes, thus contributing to genuinely protecting the city and dealing with her final demon.
Shut up and fight!
This is why she fights in the war, specifically to take down Ambessa.
Bold little one.
I can't with Ambessa. Like, this stuff is her fix, dog. Oh! And I ain't mad, cause Ambessa be playing an eye for an eye rules here. Literally. She's over the betrayal, still impressed by Caitlyn and treating her like her own. Which, like, isn't saying much given what happened to Kino and Mel's state. But yeah. In the thick of the battle, she's still giving her advice, to the extent that she tells her her own weakness.
Desperation is the doorway to oblivion, child.
Even with her and Mel, Ambessa was too strong. Vision didn't work. Might didn't work. Guile also didn't work. There was only one more thing to do. Ambessa only had those ruins as a means of protecting herself from Mel. They were her weakness, so she needed to take them from her for them to have a chance. And for her to get close enough to do so, she would need to apply Ambessa's personally added principle:
Sacrifice.
Caitlyn gives up her eye, a fate foreshadowed this entire time in the opening credits. A maddened Macbeth who gains her sanity again as the lines cross over her left eye. Personally, I don't think the sacrifice was enough to redeem Caitlyn for all the suffering she had inflicted on so many. I don't think it makes her a good leader, finally worthy of the Kiramman key, or worthy of Vi's affection. The war masks the extent of her personal crime, and it was the effort and sacrifices of others that dealt with the mess. She even retreats from the council, allowing for more suitable and fresh blood to deal with the Zorn-Piltover situation, which is a wise thing to do, but given that it wasn't her ambition to have, it wasn't a sacrifice for atonement, but rather her getting what she wanted at the end. In saying all this, the alternative was anarchy. Because as I mentioned before, making the elite pay creates a huge power vacuum, which requires complete regime change to address. And as history shows us, most of the time, those with less that come into power become so overconsumed and indulged in the freedom it offers that they become no better than the elite that they had overthrown. A huge level of self-control is needed to avoid this fate. Though possible, it's rare to find. And even rarer to find them in a place to accept or have power. I don't think any of the characters in Arcane have shown that caliber of self-control, really. Not even Echo. So the all-out war in the original story wasn't going to lead into anything good. Instead, the writers took a centrist approach to the ending, which feels like the best situation. Why? Because the two-state solution proposed by Jace in the ending of Season 1 would have absolved Piltover from all acknowledgement and accountability for what they had done to the Undercity, leaving the poor, impoverished people to deal with the messes as a consequence of an unjust regime, keeping both sides of the river as one, and establishing a new council which has just seen the unasked for help from the Undercity for this war that they were in, as well as adding Savika to the council. We could finally see some accountability from topside and perhaps changes for the good, hopefully including some accountability from this young Kiramman over here. Essentially a good compromise for the result that we would have wanted from anarchy. But if you want a more fleshed out view on the politics of Piltover and Zorn, then don't worry, because our next Arcane analysis is finally the thematic free will and predestination opinion piece, where we discuss how politics in the world come into play, as well as other elements of this debate. So I hope you've enjoyed my Arcane character analyses this past year. I really enjoyed making them. And I also hope that you'll stick around for my opinion pieces on the show. Not to mention, more movie content on this channel. So be brave, be happy, and be kind, and I'll catch you all next time.